Hello everybody and welcome back to another Django and React tutorial video. In this video, we're going to be continuing from where we left off. And what we're actually going to be doing is making a view so we can look at room details. So right now we're able to create a room. You can see this is working, this is fully functioning, but now we need a way to actually view this room. So how can we use this code to access the room? So what we're going to do is set up a page that will allow us to go to something like /room and then / whatever this code is. And then that will pull up the details related to that room. And then from there, we will allow users to join the room. We'll add the media player, which will allow us to, play, pause. We'll hook up with Spotify. There's a ton of other things that we still need to do. I'm going slowly. I want to explain everything that I can. But yeah, just wanted to give you kind of an idea of where we're at and what we're going to be doing in the rest of the videos. So let's get started. The first thing that I want to do here is actually make a new component. So I'm going to go inside of components and I'm going to make a component called room.js. This is going to be responsible for handling the page that is simply like once we're in the room or we've created a room, this is what we see. So this is kind of maybe like the main application or the main page of our application. So inside of here, I'm going to say import React component from React like that. Then we're going to make our class. We're going to say export default class. We'll call this one room, and that extends components like that. And then we can say constructor. This will take props like that. We will need to call the super constructor. So we'll say super, no, not that, not subble. I don't even know what that was, something cryptocurrency. Okay, super and then props like that. And then inside of here, while we're in here, I'm just going to define the state that we're going to be using. So I'm going to say this.state equals, and then what I'm going to put inside of here is votes to skip. This will start at default, I guess, 2. It doesn't really matter what we put as the default here, but we'll just put it at 2. Then we need the guest can pause. That will start at false. We could make it true again. Default doesn't really matter. And finally, one new one, which is host, and that's going to be default false. So these are just the piece of information that I want to know about each room. Obviously, I want to know the room code as well, but we'll talk about that in a second. But I need the votes to skip. I need guest can pause, and I need if the user is the host or not. Let's define a render function down here. And what we can do is just return, and actually let's just return the state and just have a look at what that is. So I don't know if there's an easy way to convert that to a string, but we can just kind of do our own thing. So let's return a div /div. We'll make it, somewhat pretty just so we can see some things nice here. So we'll say p and then end the p tag. Inside of here, we will add this.state votes to skip, and then we can just put maybe like a little prefix before this, votes. I would copy that, but we're gonna have to write most of it. So now we'll say guest can pause, and that will be equal to this.state guest can pause, and then last one for host. So p and the p tag, and we'll say host. And that will be equal to this.state.is host like that. All right, so now we have a component called room. And what we're going to do is pretty much figure out how we can actually get to this page. So how do we get to this room page? Now, the way that I'm planning on handling this is having it so that we go to a URL where we go to /room and then /the room code. You can see that I've tried this out previously. I have a room code there. But for example, we go to this code down here that we just typed in, and then that would bring us to this room page. So I'm planning on determining what the code of the room is by just looking in the URL bar. And I don't really care if it's visible in the URL bar because, well, you need to know what the code is to be able to access a room. So you can just access a room if you know the code by typing it in the URL or by using our UI, and we'll make a page that allows you to join a room and all of that kind of stuff. But ideally, after you press this create a room button, you should be redirected to a page that is, has this code and represents that room. So let's go now to homepage.js and let's set up a route to allow us to actually do that. So I'm going to say route like that. I'm going to say path equals, and then inside of here, we'll go /room and then / room code. Now, whenever you add a colon, this denotes we're going to have a parameter in our URL, or we're going to have some kind of variable there. And then I'll say the component is going to be equal to room, and we'll have to import that. So let's go up to the top before we forget, and let's import room. So let's import room from /room semicolon like that. Okay, so what's actually going to happen here is we've set up a route or a route, whatever you want to call it, that allows us to go to room / and then whatever the room code is, and then we have a component equal to room. Now, the way that React Router works is it will by default pass some props to our room component here that will have information relating to how we got there. So it'll actually give us a prop called match. Match pretty much tells us how it matched the URL we went to with this string here, and that will give us access to the parameters from this URL, and from that parameters we can grab room code, and well, we can see that. So to show you that, let's go to room.js, and I'm just going to write a variable here that says this dot room code, and that is going to be equal to this dot props dot match dot params.room code. So match is the prop that stores all of the information about essentially how we got to this component from React Router. So that's what React Router does. It adds match as a prop to this component when it's rendered. And then of course we can access the room code from the parameters of the URL. So now let's simply show the room code. I guess we can show this in maybe a heading. Let's go something like h3. And then inside of here, we don't even have to say room code. We can just show room code because I think we'll know what it is. So we'll say this dot room code. All right, so now all we have to do, if we go to homepage, we can see we set up this route. So let's go to URLs and let's set one up on the back end just to make sure we don't crash when we go there. So we're gonna go to path, and then this is gonna be room / and inside of here, I'm gonna say string room code, just setting up a dynamic URL, and that will bring us to index. So this is very similar to what I just did inside of React. It's pretty much saying, hey, we'll accept any string here after room. That's really all there is to it. It's just a dynamic URL. I think that's what they're called. If you want it to be an int, you would put int, right? You put whatever the Python representation of the object is, colon, and then whatever you want the name of the parameter to be. We don't really care in this case, but I'll just keep it consistent at room code. So now let's just give it a shot, and let's go to /room/ and let's actually go to the code that we already used. So that one right there. And if we paste, we can see that we get the room code, votes, guest can pause, and host. Now it's strange it's not showing me guest can pause and host. I can look at that in a second, but you can see it showing us the room code at a minimum. Now I just want to show you something. If I go to hello, notice that this works. Any string works. So we will need to forbid people from going to a page where a room does not yet exist, but that's something that we'll do in just a second. All right, so now that we've done that, we have a way to actually get to that room. We need a way to get these other details, right? We need the votes to skip, we need guest can pause, and we need is host or not. And yeah, so how do we do that? Well, what we have to do is we have to send a request to our backend for this information. So what we're gonna do is give our backend the room code, and then the backend will look at that room code, find the room, and then give us the information that we want, which is votes to skip, guest can pause, is host, and maybe anything else. So let's go to views.py inside of API, and let's make a new view that can do that for us. Now, before we do that, I need to thank AlgoExpert for sponsoring this video and this series. In my opinion, AlgoExpert is the best way to prepare for your coding interviews or to learn data structures and algorithms extremely fast. Now, an interesting fact about AlgoExpert is that I actually teach on the platform. So if you're preparing for your coding interviews and you want to hear even more of my voice, then head over to AlgoExpert and use the code TechWithTim for a discount on the platform. The link is in the description. So what we can actually do is go right here and we can say class room retrieve like that, or we can say like get room. You know what, maybe get room makes more sense. It's easier to type too. Let's say class get room. This is going to inherit from API view, just like we used for the create room view. And then inside of here, we're going to define two things. So we're going to define our serializer class, which is going to be equal to the room serializer. And then we're going to define our lookup underscore URL underscore kwarg, standing for keyword argument. And that's going to be equal to code. So essentially what this means is that when we call this get room API view and we call it with a get request, well, that's what we're going to be using. We need to pass a parameter in the URL called code, and that code will be equal to the room that we're trying to get. So we'll say define get, we'll say self, we'll say request, and then we can say the optional format equal to none. Then here, the first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to get what the code is from the URL. So we're going to say request.get and then self.lookup underscore URL. Come on, if you can type properly. URL underscore kwarg like that. And sorry, this should be equal to, that's probably why I wasn't getting the autocomplete. But when you look at request.get, this is giving you information about the URL from the get request. When I say .get, we're looking for any parameters in the URL, and I'm looking for one that matches the name code. I'm going to get that, and that will tell me essentially what that parameter was equal to. So now I'll have access to the code, and then I can look up the room by the code, and well, we can go from there. So now I'm going to say if code does not equal none, so just make sure we actually do have a code here that was passed in the URL, then what we'll do is we'll say room equals, and well, we will have to filter all of our room objects and figure out which room has this code. So we can simply say room dot objects dot filter, and then inside of here we'll say code equals code. Now since code is unique, that should always give us the correct value, or it should always give us, sorry, what am I saying? Now, since code is unique, that should always give us only one value. So we'll just have to make sure that we do indeed have a room. And then if we do, we can grab that value out and do what we want with it. So if we do have a room, we'll say if the len of room is greater than 0, then we will say that our data is equal to room serializer. We're going to serialize the room 0, so the first entry in our room, and then we're going to get the data from that. So this is strange, but what I'm doing is I'm serializing the room. We know that there's only going to be one room, right? So we can just access it at room 0, and then I'm taking the data, which will just kind of be like a Python dictionary, and kind of extracting that from the room serializer. So typically, if we were to just return the room serializer, which I think we have done. If you look here, I'm returning the .data, right? So here I'm just storing it in a variable instead, and now I'm going to add some things to it, like, for example, is the user the host of this room? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say data, and then we're going to actually pass is underscore host, or we're going to make is underscore host as a new key inside of our data, and that's going to be equal to the following expression. So self.request.session underscore key is equal to room 0 dot host. Now the reason I'm doing this is because the host is going to be the session key of whoever is the host of this room. So I can check our current session key, so whatever user sent this request, and see if it's equal to this. And if it is, that means that this user is the host. If it's not, that means they are not the host. So I can just store that in a key called isHost on my data. It's just a Python dictionary, so I can simply add it to that like what I just did. And then I can return a response, and in the response I can return my data, and then I can say status equals status dot http underscore 200 underscore okay. Now in the situation where this is not true, we don't actually have a room, then let's return a response that says no, there is no room there. So we'll say return response. Instead of returning data, we'll return our own kind of custom object here, and we'll say bad request. And then this will be equal to invalid room code. And actually we can say, instead of that, we'll just say room not found, invalid room code. And then for the status, we can say that is equal to status dot http underscore 404, because we did not find the room. So 404 just means, like not found. You've probably seen a 404 page before. Next, if none of this is true, so in the situation where we actually weren't given a code in the URL, then what we need to return is that, hey, we didn't get the right data, so we couldn't give you something. So we're going to say return response. Inside of here, we can say bad request, and then we'll say code parameter not found in request, something like that, and then just say status equals status dot http underscore 400 underscore bad request. All right, so that should be our get room class. Now let's hook that up with an endpoint. So let's go to URLs. Let's go here, and we'll make a new path. We'll simply call this one get-room, and then I guess we'll import the get room, so like that, and get room dot as underscore view. All right, so that should work. So let's actually go to our URL here and let's try this out. So I'm going to say API-get room question mark, and then I'm going to pass the code equal to. When you put a question mark, that's saying we're passing a parameter essentially, or like some variable. And let's just do this with hello. I don't remember what the code was, so let's pass it as hello. And notice it says room not found, invalid room code. Now what happens if I don't pass a parameter? Well, we get code parameter not found in request. And then if I do actually pass a valid one, well, I'm going to have to find it now. API rooms, or what was it? API room. Okay, let's just look for this one that we created. So we'll steal that. API get -room question mark code equals that. And there you go. We see we get the information that we wanted, as well as this thing that says is host, and that is equal to true. So now all we have to do is send this request from our JavaScript, and we'll be able to update our state on our room page. So now I'm just going to make a method inside of here called get room details. And all we'll do inside of here is simply fetch the details that we want. So we'll say fetch, and then we'll fetch /API /get-room, and then we will add that to question mark code equals plus this dot room code, because we have that there, and that should be a string. So there we go. That is the request that we want to send. Then what we will do is say dot then response arrow function, and we can do whatever we want inside of here, which is just going to be return the response dot JSON. Now, I don't think I actually need to write return. I think I can just do that. Yeah, that's perfectly fine. We'll just say response.json. Just kind of a trick here when you're doing an arrow function that's only one line, so you only have one thing. It just assumes that whatever you write after the arrow, if you only write one thing and there's no squiggly brackets, that's what's going to be returned. So if I just write response.json without the return statement, it just assumes that's going to be returned. Then I can do another dot then. So I'm going to say dot then. I'm going to say data, so this will get the response.json, and that will then go to actually a full function. And what we'll do inside of here is we'll say this dot set state, and inside of set state, we'll say votes to skip, and that's going to be equal to data dot votes _to _skip, because remember it's passing those keys to us as underscores, because in Python we use the snake case. And then we'll say guest can pause :data dot guest _can _pause, and then is host will be equal to data dot is _host. Okay, so now we actually have a function that can simply get for us the room details. So what we will do now, after we have the room code, is we'll say this dot get room details. Now that will update the state for us, and then hopefully that will make it, or that will, sorry, not hopefully, it will force a re-render whenever this is done being called when we set the state. And it should show us the details about the room if we go to a room with the correct code. So let's go here. I'm just going to steal this code. And now rather than go to API /get-room, let's go to code, what am I saying? Let's go to room / and then paste that in there. Okay, so it's still giving us votes to, guest can pause nothing, host nothing. Technically, this is right. I just went back and looked at what the votes for this room actually were, and it is 2. But I want to make sure that we actually see all this information. So I'm just going to quickly convert this information to a string. So I'm going to say 2, I think it's literally just 2 string. Yep, so it does look like it's 2 string, so I'll put .toString here, and then I'll put .toString here as well, just so we can actually see those values. So let's go back here now. Let's do a fresh, and we get, yes, the host is true, and guest can pause is true, and votes 2. So that is indeed working. We're getting the correct information that's being updated on room. All right, so now that all of that is working, let's go to the create room page, and let's make it so that when we press that create room button, it actually redirects us to the correct page. So what we're gonna have to do is go to the function where it handles the button pressed, and we're gonna have to redirect right here. So you see, notice we just have data, console.log data. We're gonna have to redirect our user to the web page that's corresponding with /room/code. So to do that, we're gonna say this .props .history. This is another one that React Router will automatically add to the props when it renders this component. And then we're going to say .push. And what we're actually going to do is push to /room and then /plus, not this, sorry, data.code. Now I think it comes in just straight as code, but this should give us the room code. So we'll go to room / whatever the room code is. So we can test this out. Let's go to the create page. So let's close this and let's go to create. And now let's simply create a room, and notice that it redirects us to this room. So that's awesome. Let's now change the votes to be like 4. Let's say no control, create room, and notice that boom, this gets updated, votes 4, guest can pause false. So yeah, that is all I wanted to show us in this tutorial video. In the next video, what we're going to be doing is working a bit more on this room page. Let me go to it here, just making it obviously look a little bit better. We may or may not add the media player. I think it's a little bit too early to do that, but I also want to work on the join room page. We've got a lot of stuff to do. I'm not quite sure exactly what we'll tackle in the next video, but it'll be something along those lines of, joining the room or, making this one look a little bit prettier or whatever that may be. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next tutorial video.